Somewhere in the Northern Ural Mountains of Soviet Russia, there is a peak that the indigenous Mansi people have called Kholat Syakhl for as long as anyone can remember. In their ancient language, those two words carry only one meaning: the Mountain of the Dead. And on the night of February 1st, 1959, 9 of the most experienced young hikers in the entire Soviet Union vanished on its slopes, leaving behind a scene so disturbing, so physically impossible to explain, that the Russian government classified the investigation and buried it in a sealed archive for 30 years.
What the search team found when they finally reached that mountain would haunt investigators, scientists, and historians for decades to come. The tent had been slashed open, not from the outside, but from within. The 9 hikers had cut their way out into a blizzard capable of freezing unprotected skin in under 2 minutes. They ran barefoot, or nearly so, into minus 30 degrees Celsius darkness, and not one of them ever came back. It is January 1959. The Soviet Union stands at the height of its Cold War power. Stalin has been dead for 6 years, and Nikita Khrushchev rules a nation where secrecy is not merely a habit, it is a religion. Military experiments, government failures, unexplained deaths, all buried beneath classified stamps and official silence. Into this world, 9 young students from the Ural Polytechnic Institute set out on what should have been the greatest adventure of their lives. Their leader was Igor Dyatlov, 23 years old, a gifted engineer and a veteran hiker who had organized dozens of expeditions into Russia's most brutal terrain. He was methodical, careful, and experienced far beyond his years. Beside him was Zinaida Kolmogorova, known for her warm laugh and iron-willed determination. Rustem Slobodin, the quiet intellectual who analyzed every step of the journey. Yuri Krivonishenko, whose sharp wit and infectious energy kept the group's spirits burning. Nikolai Thibault-Brignol, the son of a political prisoner, a man who had grown up in the shadow of the Soviet machine. Ludmila Dubinina, the youngest woman of the group, fierce, fearless, unstoppable. Semyon Zolotaryov, the mysterious older outsider who joined the expedition at the last moment, a veteran of World War II driven by motivations no one else fully understood. And 2 others, Yuri Doroshenko and Alexander Kolovatov, completing a team that, by any measure, should have been capable of conquering any mountain Russia could throw at them. 9 lives, 9 stories, 1 mountain.
They departed from Sverdlovsk on January 23, 1959, first by train, then by truck through frozen logging roads, then on foot into the white wilderness. They were Category 3 hikers, the highest civilian mountaineering rating in the entire Soviet system. This was to be their defining challenge, a winter traverse of the Northern Urals that would earn them the highest possible certification. In their group photographs from those early days, they are laughing. They are joking in their shared diary. They write about the cold with affection, the way only people who have mastered cold can. They have absolutely no idea that they are walking directly towards something that will make their names permanently famous, for the most terrible of reasons. By January 28th, they had reached the edge of the Great Forest. By January 31st, they had climbed above the tree line, where the wind screams across the naked ridge with nothing to slow it. The mountain rose above them into gray, churning cloud. On February 1st, their last known day alive, they were attempting to cross the shoulder of Kholat Syakhl when the weather deteriorated rapidly. Dyatlov made a decision that expedition leaders sometimes make in moments of urgency. Instead of retreating to the safety of the forest below, he chose to pitch the tent directly on the open slope. They dug it in, anchored it against the wind, ate together, and and settled into the night. What happened inside that tent between approximately 9 p.m. and midnight on February 1st, 1959 is the question that has consumed the world for 65 years.
16 days passed. The group had not returned to their planned rendezvous. They were overdue. A formal search and rescue operation was launched on February 20th. On February 26th, the searchers found the tent, collapsed, half buried under blown snow and cut open from the inside. The men and women who stood before it that morning could not speak. Everything of value was still inside. Boots, heavy coats, food, equipment that, without exception, no experienced winter hiker would ever willingly abandon. And yet, it had been abandoned.
Footprints in the snow told the next part of the story. 12 sets of tracks from 9 people, some barefoot, some in socks, moved away from the tent in a direction leading downhill toward the tree line. The steps were measured and controlled, not erratic, not panicked. Whatever had driven these 9 people out of their tent in the middle of a blizzard, they had responded to it with the terrible calm of people walking deliberately towards something, or away from something they could not outrun. At the edge of the forest, approximately 1 kilometer from the tent, the searchers found the remains of a small fire beside a large cedar tree. Beside that fire lay the first 2 bodies, Krivanishko and Doroshenko, wearing nothing but their underwear, in conditions that made survival in such clothing a matter of minutes. Their hands were burned. They had fed the fire, and then, at some point, they had simply stopped. Above them, branches had been snapped from the cedar at a height of 5 meters, a height that required climbing. Someone had gone up into that tree, looking for something, watching for something, or trying to escape something that was moving below. 3 more bodies were discovered on the slope between the cedar tree and the tent, positioned as though they had been trying to make their way back. Dyatlov lay on his back, facing the tent, his arm partially raised. Kolmogorova was found curled against the snow, her face showing the marks of her final, ferocious struggle against the cold. Slobodin lay nearby, and a later examination would reveal a hairline fracture in his skull. All 5 were officially declared dead of hypothermia. But the investigation was not finished. 4 members of the group were still missing. Search teams probed the snow throughout March and April. It was not until May, when the deep snowpack finally began to surrender to spring, that the last 4 bodies were found, buried under 4 meters of snow in a ravine 70 meters from the cedar. And it was here, in that frozen hollow, that what had appeared to be a terrible tragedy became something that science has never been able to adequately explain. Nikolai Thibault-Brignol had sustained a massive, catastrophic skull fracture, the kind of traumatic force associated with high-velocity impact, comparable to what you might see in a serious automobile accident. Lyudmila Dubinina and Semyon Zolotaryov had each suffered devastating rib fractures, multiple ribs broken simultaneously on both sides of their chests. The forensic expert who examined them stated without equivocation that the force required to produce such injuries would be equivalent to a person being struck by a moving vehicle. But here is where reason fails entirely. There were no external wounds, no cuts, no bruising on the skin, no surface damage of any kind. Whatever had shattered their bones from the inside had done so without leaving a single visible mark on the outside of their bodies. And Lyudmila Dubinina, 20 years old, the youngest woman, was found missing her tongue, her eyes, and portions of her lips and facial tissue. Some of this, investigators suggested,
might be explained by prolonged exposure and decomposition in the meltwater of the ravine. Others, looking at the specific nature of the removal, were not satisfied with that explanation and have never been. The Soviet investigator in charge of the case sat down to write his final report. He was a man trained in Soviet bureaucratic certainty. The system did not tolerate ambiguity. And yet, what he wrote was this: the cause of death was an unknown compelling force which the hikers were unable to overcome. An unknown compelling force. That was the official conclusion of the Soviet Union regarding the deaths of 9 of its own citizens. And then they stamped it classified, locked the file, and said nothing more for 30 years. Why? That single question, why did they seal it, launched 1,000 theories, spawned a global obsession, and turned the Dyatlov Pass into the most analyzed, most debated unsolved mystery of the 20th century. The first and most officially endorsed theory is an avalanche. The Russian government's 2019 reinvestigation concluded that a slab avalanche struck the tent while the group slept, causing them to cut their way out in panic and sustain their injuries from snow and ice as they fled. On the surface, it seems plausible. Avalanches are real. Slab avalanches in the Urals in winter? Real. But researchers and the victims' families have dismantled this theory piece by piece since the day it was proposed. When the search team arrived on February 26th, over 3 weeks after the incident, there was no avalanche debris visible at the site. The slope gradient at the tent location measured between 15 and 20 degrees, below the threshold typically required for a slab release. The footprints leaving the tent were calm and orderly, not the tracks of 9 people fleeing a crushing wall of snow. And no avalanche in recorded history has ever removed a person's tongue and eyes. The second theory? Soviet military involvement. The Ural Mountains during this period were a known testing ground for experimental military ordnance, including parachute mines designed to detonate above ground level and produce devastating pressure wave injuries, internal damage without external wounds. Some of the victims' clothing was found to contain measurable low levels of radioactive contamination, a detail that the official report noted and then did not pursue. Did the hikers stumble into a weapons test? Were they silenced? This theory struggles with its own questions. If the Soviet government had deliberately killed these students, a thorough cover-up would surely have involved removing the bodies entirely, not leaving them on a mountain for searchers to find. The third theory is infrasound, a phenomenon that turns the human mind against itself. Certain combinations of terrain, wind speed, and atmospheric conditions can generate low-frequency sound waves below the threshold of human hearing. These infrasound waves are known to produce in their victims a spectrum of psychological effects: extreme anxiety, rising panic, visual and auditory hallucinations, and most terrifyingly, an overwhelming, sourceless sensation of a presence, something watching, something close. Did the specific geography of Kholat Syakhl on that specific night produce a resonance that drove 9 rational, trained human beings into a panic so profound that they fled into certain death? It is a theory that cannot be proven. It is also a theory that cannot be disproven. The fourth theory belongs to the Mansi people, who named this mountain long before any of this happened. They speak of a force on Kholat Syakhl that is not natural. Some researchers, approaching it from a purely physical standpoint, note that the crushing internal injuries sustained by the victims in the ravine match what you would expect from an immensely powerful biological entity capable of delivering force without piercing the skin. A bear in hibernation disturbed. Something larger.
something the mountains of the Northern Urals have sheltered in legend for centuries. Science dismisses this first and fastest. It is also the theory that has never been put fully to rest.
And then there is a fifth theory, the one that the official record tries hardest to ignore. Multiple witnesses in the weeks surrounding the incident, including military personnel stationed in the region, reported seeing orange, glowing spheres hovering and moving over the Ural Mountains at night. 2 of the cameras recovered from the group contained photographs that, when developed, showed anomalous lights, circular, luminous formations in the sky above the ridge. These photographs have been studied, debated, and explained as lens flares, long exposures, and atmospheric phenomena. Not everyone accepts those explanations.
In 2019, 60 years after the incident, the Russian government formally reopened the Dyatlov Pass. After a new investigation employing modern forensic methods and computer modeling, they announced, again, that the cause was a natural snow event. The families of the 9 victims, the researchers who have dedicated decades to this question, and the international community of investigators were not satisfied. They remain unsatisfied today. The Soviet government sealed that file. We know they knew something because the regional prosecutor himself wrote that the cause of death was an unknown, compelling force. And then the state buried those words for 3 decades. The question is not whether there was something to hide. The question is what? Kholat-Syakhl, the Mountain of the Dead. It bore that name centuries before 1959. The Mansi say the mountain has always taken what it wants. 9 lives are its most famous proof.
The file is open now. The theories have multiplied. The evidence remains incomplete. The families of the 9 are aging. The researchers grow older. The world moves forward. And somewhere up there, in the snow and the silence and the cold and the dark, the answer to what happened on the night of February 1st, 1959 is still waiting. What killed them? We still do not know. And perhaps, after 65 years of trying, that is the most terrifying truth of all.